So I just having one, count of the panelists we have during these 3 days. So total count came 45 speakers and distinguished personalities coming from academics and industry, besides the 70 paper presenters. So now may I request Sri Arun Sheth, President, Chairman Alcatel Lucent India, to deliver the valedictory address. Sir, over to you.
Can I get the presentation?
Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Siddiqui, it's a real honor that you, the founder of the college, are right here. So, welcome, Mr. Mishra, co-chairs. I'm afraid I wouldn't know the exact name, so I don't want to take the danger of trying to pronounce them. And most important, volunteers, who were sometimes forgotten. When I was a college student, I was volunteering everywhere and people would forget about us. So I'm so glad that Mr. Mishra, that we all talked about them. Just I'm not sure how many people are familiar with Alcatel, but it's a pretty large Anglo-French company. And I'm in India. And the fact that this entire conference has been organized by an Indian university, a French university, an American university, I think is very appropriate. So thank you for inviting me. But this is a complete coincidence. This was not planned. But Alcatel is a very large corporation with about $20 billion of sales. And we truly believe in this whole business of sustainable development. And I hope that as we go down, I'll be able to give some examples, not only from my company, but from many other companies, of how responsible MNEs or MNCs behave and should be doing. Yeah. As I said, sustainability is a business imperative. It's nothing to do with CSR. Most of the time, unfortunately, that gets confused. Because it so happens that most companies start their sustainability practice in the CSR department. But frankly speaking, it'll remain there. And what must be done is you have to actually make sustainability move into the business side and embed it into the DNA. And I hope that as I go down my little talk, I'll be able to give you some reasons of how companies are doing it. And by the way, everybody doesn't succeed. A lot of multinationals goof up also. And there are failures, but unfortunately nothing gets written about them. And my suggestion to the academia would be that write more of the failures. There are more lessons in the failures than in successes, if you can get hold of the data. I'm really pleased, first of all, that the word being used here is MNEs and not MNCs, because MNCs have a very emotive content. As you can see, even in Parliament, the word MNC is not particularly, is pretty emotive. And incidentally, it's not an Indian phenomenon. This happens even in Europe, even in the West, when an MNC need not be just a Western company coming into India. The Mahindras are an MNC. There are so many companies, and I'm glad there was one professor in the morning who was talking about Male. That's an Indian MNC. GMR is an Indian MNC. So it's not MNCs just from the West. It's any company with global practices, and the lessons, they behave exactly the same way. Countries behave exactly the same way. That's human nature. Let me focus on just a couple of things here. What I'd call a new normal is really what we need to be aware of. All the stability of the last 70, 80 years have disappeared. You have a population coming up of 10 billion, you have climate change, you have the financial crisis coming in, you have energy disruptions, and water will be a challenge. And I personally believe, and I don't know whether anything was discussed around water in this conference, but to my mind, there will be wars over water before there will be wars over energy. We do not focus enough on that. So we have to find ways and means of making that more prevalent and thought about. And the reason I'm saying this is that you plan based on certain assumptions. But all I'm saying is for the next 20, 30 years, there's going to be disruptions all around on account of resources, on account of water, on account of climate change. We don't know what's going to happen. But we can do our best is to mitigate those things. Therefore, sustainable development and sustainable thinking inside the organizations and in governments must be there. It can't be only for the profit motive, I was very pleased to hear that. As this I think I've already covered, we need to embed it inside. And I'd say, in terms of a simple framework, there's no point I can come here and talk of 25 things, but I'm going to just simply talk about one simple thing, is that when large multinationals or when Indian companies go abroad, the temptation inside a multinational is very simple. Just do whatever has been successful at home. And I think that's the kiss of death in the first place. You can't transport everything. Maybe you can transport some parts of it, some of the learnings, but if you try and transport exactly what you were doing in your home country, impossible. You are bound to fail. And I'll give a little example from my own company. Before Alcatel, I was also chairman of British Telecom. And we did a project here in India, in Haryana and in UP, to provide agricultural information to farmers. And the folks sitting in London said, wow, we're going to put a PC in these villages and we're going to use internet. That's what they used to. And if we had managed, if we hadn't protested from here and said, no, it's not going to work, because even if you put a PC, there's no energy, there's no power to run the PC, and there's no internet to talk of. So we converted the whole project into, and by the way, even if we put it, none of the farmers know English, and they don't know how to use the keyboard. So I'm saying that's what's successful there, but if you simply transport, it doesn't work. So we converted the whole thing into a mobile-based project. So you take a mobile phone, don't even type anything, message, no SMS, you actually call a particular voicemail system in your own language and dialect. And it gets recorded, and it gets sent to an expert or to a knowledge engine, and in 24 to 48 hours, you get an answer back saying, you get an SMS saying, please call up, and the answer is read back in the same dialect and language. You eliminated all the constraints which are there. And it's extremely successful, and we have studies which showed that 25% increase in agricultural productivity did happen as a result of people using their information. And now they're using it, by the way, I'm so glad that this is here. That same engine is being used for teaching rural teachers. If rural teachers have a question on physics, the same engine, but a different expert system, gives their answer back. And the simple answer is that in the West, or even in cities, we want instant answers. When my credit card gets lost, I want an answer, I want to speak to a person. In a village in India, and I'm sure villages in Africa, even 48 hours is instant. So it's fundamental assumptions you need to get into. That's what I said, you need to challenge the old assumptions. This example I've given you. And frugal design is what we should adapt in terms of all the things that we do. I'll give you an example of frugal design from another company, from GE. I'm sure you're familiar with the word GE. There's a problem in India and across all over the world that there are infant mortality is very high, especially in villages. There are no doctors, no electricity, and when a premature infant is born, unless you put in a city or in the West, what you do is immediately rush the kid into an incubator, which would work, and things would be okay. But there's none of that here. Out here, one of the current options, if you notice, the first one is actually a light bulb, which sometimes the doctor puts on the stomach of the baby. If the electricity is there. It's luck for the baby the electricity is not there, otherwise worse things happen. So it's pretty horrible out there. A normal incubator costs $20,000, requires constant electricity, but this company, a GE and an Indian company, worked together and came up with something called an Embrace infant warmer, which actually separates the energy from, so you can use boiling water, heat a little pad, put it inside this little sleeping bag, and for 6 to 7 hours it works. It works for 96-97% of the time, but that's an appropriate solution rather than putting a $20,000 incubator, which is no electricity, no maintenance possible. So I'm saying, so companies are thinking like that. You need to think differently because of the assumptions. Bell Labs is part and parcel of Alcatel-Lucent. I made this presentation to the head of Bell Labs. And those people, I asked them, I didn't tell them the solution. I said, tell me what the solution is going to be. They said, can we use solar power? Can we use this? When they came, they said, my God, we assume that somebody's doing the right job, so I put in a plug and it works. So you're designed under those constraints. You've got to think differently. So they've all come here to figure out how to do things differently. Because who knows, in 30 years, even in other Western countries, the power may be equally bad with the way things are going. And being from the ICT industry, I would say let's use ICT very aggressively to basically solve some of these energy problems, education problems. I mean, take a little comment. There's a company called M-Pesa. Have anybody heard of M-Pesa in Nigeria? There's no banking system there. So today, 60% of all cash transfers happen over the mobile phone in Nigeria. And now Vodafone is taking that world over. Same way, even in India, you're talking of, it's a very emotive subject here currently is the direct cash subsidy transfer, which is going to use mobile banking using the UID. These are innovative solutions which are appropriate and affordable for such countries. And these models can all be transported globally. Take my word on it. In our case, let's say in my telecom sector, I don't think you people are aware of how much energy we consume. We call ourselves a green sector. We are green primarily because the energy we use, we save more energy for other people from traveling, from video conferences, from whatever it is. So therefore we are green because we are a net saver of energy. But we are a huge energy hog. I'm going to show you one slide. I'm sure people will fall out of their seats. The top line there is global electricity supply. This is where we are today in terms of users of the internet. As you can see that if we don't do the efficiency gains, the internet is going to consume about 80% or 60-70% of the global electricity supply. So it's such an issue. So we need to work very, very hard to make sure that we are able to reduce the energy consumption in telecom networks. Even in India, as you know, we have 400,000 towers. Airtel's energy bill is more than $1 billion. In the UK, my previous company, BT, consumed 1.5% of UK's electricity. So it's a huge, huge issue, and companies like us, this is an imperative. It's a cost imperative, it's an environmental imperative, it's all over the place. In India, are you guys aware that the telecom industry is the second largest consumer of diesel? Because none of you want your phones to be switched off, so you want it on. The power doesn't work. So we have about 10% of them, they run only on diesel. So we have a huge challenge ahead of us. So what did we do? In Alcatel, we've done something which is amazing. We believe, theoretically, that communications networks can be 10,000 times more energy efficient. That's our plan. So what did we do? We actually we said, can we do it ourselves? Bell Labs has been known to invent the transistor